Kim, my name is Anthony. Thanks for joining us. Kat, thanks for having Kim come out with us. We've got we've got over 40 people on the call tonight, so it's very exciting to have you out. I'm going to start off we have 2 kids on the team. Actually, you know what? Let's get a little background first. So where did you grow up? When did you start playing basketball? Kind of give us a little bit of a rundown on where you started.
Okay. Yeah, I grew up in Abbotsford and Mission. I started playing basketball around grade 2, I think. I had an older sister, and I just followed her around everywhere she went and tried to copy what she did. So I got my start in AIA basketball with my dad as my coach.
Oh, fantastic. And your sister actually ended up playing post-secondary as well, correct?
She did, yeah. She played at the University of Texas Pan-American.
Oh, fantastic. And so then you ended up going to Heritage, and you had to go to school with Kat, unfortunately, but it ended up working out okay. So tell us a little bit about your high school experience.
Yeah, we had an incredibly talented high school team. We were also really lucky to have some amazing coaches who opened the gym up for us every single morning. And we had a really crazy competitive bunch that wanted to get better and pushed each other a lot. And so, yeah, I was in the gym, I think every morning before school, trying to get better, working with the coaches and working with my teammates. And we ended up winning.
Yeah, so give us a little bit of a, go ahead.
Yeah, so when I was in grade 9, I actually played with my older sister the one time, which was pretty intense. We fought a lot with each other. But that year we made it to the provincial finals, and we wound up losing to MEI. And then the next year in grade 10, through grade 12, we won the next 3 provincial championships. And yeah, then it was off to university for me.
Yeah, no kidding. So when you were in high school, you briefly touched on every morning. So what did the morning look like? What time did you wake up? Do you remember any of this stuff? It's been a little bit, but what time did you wake up? What did you guys do in the morning? Kind of give the kids a little bit of a rundown on what that kind of looks like.
Yeah, it has been a while since I've been in high school now. I want to say that I woke up around 6 maybe, but that could be wrong. But I think it was around 6 and at school around like 6:30, 6:45 maybe. And it was normally about an hour to an hour and a half in the morning, depending on how much prepping you did before school, how much makeup you put on and stuff, how long your shower took. But I didn't do a lot of that, so I was normally like a full hour and a half. We always had to start with ball handling. That was a rule. So there was always like 15, 20 minutes of ball handling. And then normally some skill work on your own or with a coach if you wanted. And for about the last 20, 25 minutes, we would play one-on-ones, 2s-on-2s, 3s-on-3s, depending on the numbers that we had and who wanted to play that morning.
Yeah, for sure. So as you had mentioned, you won 3 provincial championships while you were in high school. For that to happen, you're going to have some special things happen while you're there. What do you think were some of the things that kind of made the experience special?
Well, like I said, we were very competitive, and it wasn't just me that was in the gym in those mornings. You know, it was a lot of people. It wasn't just our starting 5 that was in the gym those mornings. There was a solid group of girls that would come a bunch of mornings a week and get work in. And then, we had the coaches who were also willing to put in the work. Man, like you guys have right now, like these workouts are so great that you guys can get together with your team, and even if you can't be in the gym, can still be doing work. Because to get to where you want to be, to become a really good team, you have to do you have to be willing to do a little bit more, because every other team is going to practice for the allotted time slots that they have. Every other high school team, every other club team, every other individual is going to be able to do the practice times. But it's the people and the teams that are going to have you doing more that are going to find success. And for me as a player, that's definitely how I found my success. I was never the most athletic. I can never really jump that high or build my game on my athleticism. And so for me, it's been a strong work ethic and being able to outwork people.
Sorry, my phone dropped me for the first time. It's a weird one. So you were talking about that. Now, when you were in high school, I believe you had an opportunity to get some work in with Canada basketball. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I did, yeah. So there was the summer going into my senior year, grade 12 year in high school, that I got my first invitation for the junior national team. So I went to the training camp and I wound up making the junior national team and played at the Francophonie Games. And from there, Canada, our senior team was in a bit of a transition period. And I got invited into the senior women's camp. And I wound up making the senior team as well that summer. I wasn't in any way, shape, or form one of the 12 best players in the country. But I was really young. I was really hungry. I think the coaches saw that, and they were starting to look at building for the future. And so they brought me along, and I went to a World Championship qualifier in Brazil. And we wound up losing to Argentina on the last second three-point shot to not qualify for the next summer's World Championships. But it was an incredible experience, to be able to see these women up close, to be able to practice with them and against them. It was humbling. It made me even more hungry. And it also kind of helped me, I think I was actually in grade 10, 9 or 10, the first time that I ever saw the Canadian women's national team practice. And I remember Langford pulled us out of school for the day, and we went and we watched them practice in Richmond. And to be able to see them, we were lucky growing up because Teresa, I think you guys talked to her last week, she went to our high school. And so she would come back and she would do open gyms on Sundays. And so we had that kind of role model. But being able to see her practice in that environment with the national team and being able to see all these other players, I was blown away. And it was kind of the first time that I had seen that women's basketball, you can become a professional athlete, you can play for your living for women's basketball. And, it was at that time that I really set my sights on being a professional women's basketball player and trying to go to the Olympics. And it was those practices that I credit for that. And so to a couple of years later be at that practice with those players was really cool. And it showed me a lot of things that I needed to work on the next year, going into my last year of high school and beyond.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what an unbelievable experience. But let's get a little specific. I know it's been a little bit of time, but let's do you know like one or two things that you were like, okay, wow, I need to step my game up in this area. And that's the big difference for me as a player in high school, seeing what older people are playing and how they're playing and what I need to do to take my game to the next level.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in high school, you can never get enough reps in and you can never be a good enough shooter. It is a skill that shooting is the one skill that it doesn't matter. Almost every single team wants and needs a shooter. Doesn't matter if you're not athletic. It doesn't matter if, you're lacking in other areas, if you can really shoot the ball. And that was something that as a young player, I definitely worked on to improve. And another thing is just, they were relentless. It was like you had to bring it every single day. There was no off days. There was no downtime. And so just having that reinforced that the next level, it's not easy. It's a grind, and you can't really take days off because there's always going to be other people that are coming for your job, you know? I mean, especially me, when I came in, I was a young player, and there was older players that got cut because they brought me on. And so it was just a constant reminder that there's other people that are doing what you're doing and are going to try to take your spot. But I would say shooting is a big thing. I mean, the biggest thing that I came back and was like, okay, get to work on that, because there's some things that really come with time. You know, a lot of the smarts and slowing the game down that can come a little bit with watching film, but some of the things and some of the tricks that some of the older players used are things that you learn over your career.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's a very tremendous advice for our kids, but I think both pieces, one, that the skill matters, but two, the competitiveness is just as important. So she mentioned two things there, ladies, and I think that's very important. She mentioned something on the court, and then she mentioned something inside of you as a person. So that's very important to take in that aspect of it. We have a question from Gabby Francis. Gabby, come on in. You're our first question. Gabby.
So I was wondering, you played Div 1. What was that experience like for you? Because I've heard good stuff, and I've also heard bad stuff about what it's like going downstairs.
Yeah, I absolutely loved my experience. I had an amazing 4 years. I had a lot of success on and off. I would say though that choosing university is a big thing, and I chose the perfect fit for me. It wasn't easy. I wound up going to the University of Utah, and when you're going to choose, for me, I knew that I didn't. It's really easy going to university nowadays, especially in that they'll try to they throw a lot of pomp at you on your recruiting visit, and it's not what it's really like. And so you're going to go out and you're going to be wined and dined, and you're going to be taken to the nicest restaurants, and you're going to kind of be shown things that maybe aren't everyday life at your university that your coaches will want to do. For me, the biggest thing that I did, and the greatest thing that I did, is I played pickup with the team. So I asked to play 5-on-5. I made sure that it was written into my visit schedule. And that was how I decided for me, was because I played and I was like, okay, I see this level. I see their style of play, and it fits in with what I do. It fits in with how I play. And so that was how I made my decision, which at the time was difficult because I chose Utah over the University of Oregon, which had Bev Smith and Mike and Allison McNeil, who had all been my national team coaches. And so I knew that it was kind of their first years in the program, and I knew that people all thought that I should go there and that I would go there. And maybe some said that that was a smarter choice if national team wise and things like that. But for me, it came down to knowing my game and seeing how I play. So yeah, I mean, people can have good experiences and bad experiences down in the South. I think it's the same thing in Canada. I think the biggest thing is when you choose, be really deliberate about your choice and don't just get blown away because they have cookies with your name on it and because they announced your name at a football game. You know, like all those things are going to be really exciting and fun and are cool experiences. But at the end of the day, it's going to be on the basketball court and the schooling that you need to take into account.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I would imagine you coming out of high school, you were recruited quite actively. And then you talked a lot about fit there. What specifically made the fit the right fit for you guys? I mean, obviously you got to play with them, but then like tell us a little bit about your university experience. It was, you know, for the kids don't quite understand the severity of what you guys actually did while you were at Utah. I think it was a pretty big run for you guys. So can you give us a little bit of a breakdown of how it went?
Yeah. So I I mean, fit-wise, it was my style of play is not one-on-one. I am very much excel in a team environment, running off of screens, moving off of the ball. And so when I played pickup, I found 4 other people that played the exact same way as me. My university coach, Elaine Elliott, was one of the best coaches I've ever played for. She was absolutely incredible teacher and mentor for me. And we had a really great 4 years. You know, we won our conference every single year. Actually, funny, until my senior year, we didn't win the conference tournament. We played in the NCAA tournament my freshman year and lost to the eventual champion in the second round. My sophomore year, we were supposed to go to the tournament, and then we did not get an at-large bid, so that was tough. We turned down the NIT, and everybody got back to work for the next year. Junior year, same thing, we lost in the second round, and then my senior year, that was kind of the one year where it took a little bit longer for our team to gel. You know, we didn't win the conference that year, but we sort of got the ball rolling at the right time. We wound up winning our conference tournament, and then we made it to the Elite Eight, which was the first time in school history. And we were playing Maryland, who wound up being the national champion that year. And we lost to them in overtime. And we actually had a chance to win it in regulation. I had a teammate on the free throw line with about 1.5 seconds left. She missed the first one, but she made the second one, so we tied and ended up losing by a few points in overtime to the champion. It was an amazing way to end my university career. You know, I was obviously quite disappointed at the time to not be in the Final Four, but now looking back, it was a good ending to a great run in university. Really great run, and just kind of springboarded my next few steps.
Yeah, fantastic. You know, what a huge trajectory that was for you to you know, get all the way to the Elite Eight and end up losing. It sounds like you lost to 2 teams that ended up winning the national championship while you were there. So that's a pretty cool. I mean, it's obviously not the best, but it's a pretty cool thing that has, you know, at least you got to see what the best in the country looks like that year. So that's kind of cool. Mara, you got some questions for us? Mara Dykstra?
Yeah. I was just wondering if you had like a pre-game preparation that you would do before your.
Do you mean as far as on the court or like before the team warm-ups and stuff?
Let's go both.
Yeah, before
mentally and
Okay. So yeah, now that I am professional, once you're a pro, you're a lot more on your own. So it's kind of like over here in France right now, I would wake up and go to shoot around, and then I would normally come home, make myself a meal, take my nap, and then when I can, I really like to get to the gym. I'm normally at the gym around it's been so long since I've had a game now. A little over 2 hours before the game, and I like to go out and hopefully have a rebounder and put up. I normally make around like 150 shots or so, 200 shots, and then I start a stretching series before the game. Now that I am older, I've started implementing some mindfulness before games and things like that. I do breathing techniques while I'm stretching, and I like to keep a ball in my hands and do lay down shooting. Obviously, this isn't always available, whether we're playing on the road or lots of times with Canada, we can't get on the court before games, before our actual team warm-up starts. And when that happens, I keep a stretching routine, which is super important, especially now that I am older. And so there is a lot of foam rolling and stretching. And during that time, I do like to have a ball in my hand, and in between stretches, I like to do some lay down form shooting. And yeah, like I said, doing my breathing techniques.
That's huge because, you know, we talked about this when we were talking with Niall the other day about how Tina Charles was when Paul and I went to go watch the Liberty play, she was putting in more work than anybody else. So, you know, you've been on the national team since you were, 17 years old. How many years has it been on the national team that you've been on the team?
Oof. I think I took 1 or 2 summers off. I think it's been like around 16 or 17. I don't know.
Right. So, I mean, that
Yeah.
shows you what it takes, ladies. Like she gave you something when there is a hoop. She gave you something when there's not a hoop. She gave you, you know, you got to take care of your body. And then now she's transitioned into mental prep. Right. And so talk a little bit about just a real brief, what mentally, from the mental aspect, what do you think has allowed you to continue to compete at the level that you're competing at for so long? Because, you know, with a lot of the girls that end up going to play pro after they finish the university experience, they'll do it for, you know, 2 or 3 years. Longevity, you know, is something that takes, I think, a mental approach that is a little different than other people. So what do you think on a mental standpoint has kind of allowed you to keep going for so long?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's never been satisfied. You know, basketball has always fascinated me because nobody's ever, you're never going to be perfect. You know, you're never going to have a perfect game. Even if you shoot 100% from the field, you know, you've made a million other mistakes on the court during the course of a game. And so for me, it's always been that inner drive to get better. I've never been satisfied, and I've never fallen completely out of love for the game. You know, obviously there's been some times where it's been hard. You know, there's been losses that have been hard. There's been stretches that have been really hard, but they haven't ever turned me away from the game. They've pushed me to get into the gym more. And I think I just love to play. And I think that's the biggest thing, because if you love to play and you love being in the gym, then it's not, you know, putting in the extra work that needs to be done isn't going to be a grind. It's not really going to feel like work. I mean, I consider myself so lucky that I am getting paid to play basketball. You know, I mean, it's very few people have this chance. And so, well, there's some times and there's some experiences overseas that, you know, are a little bit more difficult. At the same time, you can look at it and say somebody's paying me to play basketball right now, and that's it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, no kidding. Give us a little bit of a breakdown of what team you're playing on now and where you are and kind of what that's been like and how long you've been there, kind of deal. So just like a little rundown of what's going on right now with you.
Yeah. So this is my 6th year, I think, or 5th year with the same club team in France. So I, out of university, I played a few seasons in the WNBA. And then I played, during that time, I played overseas in Belgium and Spain. And my body was not great for a stretch of time. And so I did take a few seasons off, and I worked at the University of Utah. I worked and I trained. And then I took an opportunity, a short-term contract in Hungary. And from there, the next season, I came to France with this club team. My agent proposed it, and there was at that time 4 other Canadians in France, and another Canadian wound up signing on my team later that year. So it was kind of a really good fit. Since then, I've stayed. I've signed a bunch more long-term contracts, and I'll actually be here again next season. The coach is very cool with me. If I need some time off, if I'm nursing an injury or something like that, he's good with that, which is nice for an older player. But yeah, so I am in France, like 25 minutes from all the Normandy D-Day landing beaches. It's been a good spot for me. It feels a little bit like home now for my husband and I. next year will be 6 years. So we're actually also going to try to get some French citizenship out of this, which would have been very handy as a younger player, because if any of you guys have European passports or can get one in your family, that comes in very handy if you're trying to find contracts overseas.
Can you just explain that last little piece there? What does that mean, the contracting and having that citizenship, just briefly?
Okay, yeah. So in every league, there's different rules, but generally you are allowed, they call them Bosman players, so it would be kids with European passports. So if you have a European passport, most leagues allow 2 to 3 Europeans, as well as most of the roster has to be made up from people in the country that you're playing in, plus 2 to 3 European players. And then the other is we're considered non-Bosman players. So that includes everywhere else in the world that's not in Europe. So for contracts, there's normally only 2 spots. In most leagues, there's 1 or 2, American, Australian, Canadian players that are allowed. And so just, to have that European passport comes in handy, because it's a slot, and then, they can go and recruit Americans, which lots of clubs like to do.
For sure. Very cool. What an awesome experience to have you on with us. The last question I'm going to have for you is, if you could go back in time and give yourself a little bit of advice on what you should, just kind of thoughts on when you were in high school, what would a couple of those things be that you would say to yourself, like, I probably, you should focus on this, you should try this, maybe soak up this, kind of something like that. What would your advice to a younger Kim Smith be?
Mm-hmm. The first one is wear a mouth guard. I knocked my teeth out in grade 10, and I've knocked them out 6 times since then. So definitely wear a mouth guard, because dental work is no fun, especially in foreign countries. But more seriously, I would definitely say, for me, I was happy with a lot of the choices that I made, and obviously I've had a good career, but I think when I was younger, I worried too much about what other people's path was and what other people's trajectories were, and if I wasn't getting the recognition when I thought I should, or if other people were having success. I think I stayed worrying about that too much. And not that it stopped me from working hard or anything like that, but more so because it took away some of my energy. And I think it's so important now, as I've gotten older and I've become a much better leader, it's so important to be able to lift up your teammates and other people that are having success. You can be super happy for other people's success while still wanting more for yourself. And I think, some people are going to grow at different rates, and I think that you can't get discouraged by that. I mean, geez, especially if you guys just talked to Nayo, that's somebody who really came on late and has had an incredible career late in her life, and somebody that if you looked at in high school wouldn't have had what I had in high school, and I think that would be a lesson that I wish that I had when I was young Kim.
That's unreal. I mean, staying focused on taking care of your own details and making sure that you can celebrate other people's achievements. That's huge, especially on a good team. What's one of the things you talk about when you're, the difference between maybe playing on a high level team in like our club, or on your high school team. On your high school team, maybe you're just way better than the other people, but when you play with other good players, allowing yourself to enjoy the experience and other people's success. Anyway, so thank you so much, Kim. Girls, let's give her a round of applause, please. Thank you for staying up for whatever time it is over there, and we appreciate all your time, and thank you so much for coming out.